Welcome aboard Cosmos, our Nordhavn 43. We're going to share some adventures. My name is Eric Grab.
And I'm Christi Grab.
And let's get started. We took Cosmos around the world. We circumnavigated. It took us 2 years and 2 days. And we went west. We left from San Diego, went through the South Pacific, through Australia, through Indonesia, through the Suez Canal, across the Mediterranean, across the Atlantic, through the Panama Canal, and back to San Diego. And that was our route, and it was just a little bit less than 30,000, about 29,000 nautical miles.
Eric and I circumnavigated the world in our Nordhavn 43. We did it in 2 years and 2 days, covering almost 30,000 nautical miles. And when we left, we had virtually no boating experience and definitely no blue water experience. We'd never even been more than 10 nautical miles offshore. And our very first leg was from San Diego to the Marquesa Islands. So the Pacific crossing was our very first leg, and it was truly trial by fire. But we did it!
A lot of people ask us about our boating experience. Well, all we had was a 28-foot Bayliner Sierra sedan cruiser, and we just took it around the bay. So before we circumnavigated, we had only been about 5 miles offshore and didn't have a lot of boating experience. It was very, very basic. So moving up to Nordhavn and crossing oceans was definitely a big step for us. I started doing some research on boats that could travel around the world, and it seemed like sailboats were the only way to go, but as I dug a little deeper, I discovered Nordhavn, and I was amazed to see that these boats were incredibly capable. And when I started talking to Christi about it, she said, let's look even more. So we went to the Nordhavn offices and started looking at boats.
We sat down and thought about how much time we really could take away from work to travel, and we decided on 2 years. And since we only had 2 years, we realized that a powerboat was better for us, for our travels, because we could travel on more days than a sailboat can travel due to adverse winds. And we could also do rhumb lines instead of zigzag lines, so we could actually travel 50% faster by doing a rhumb line.
As we started to look at powerboats that could cross oceans and do what we wanted to do, which was circumnavigate, we noticed one of the things that caught our attention was the Nordhavn 40, which did go around the world. And we looked at the 40 and we decided maybe not quite the right boat, a little bit small. And then the plans for the 43 came out, and we were really impressed with the 2 staterooms and the 2 heads, the bigger pilot house. And it just seemed about the right size, not too big, not too small, something that was just within our budget, within our reach. And so we decided to go for the 43, and we were always very grateful because we think it was a good choice, and we've had great experiences aboard. Our first passage was from San Diego to the Marquesas, an island called Nuka Hiva, and it was 2,832 miles, and we burned 1,000 gallons of fuel going across, and it was 21 days nonstop. We started the engine up, and I remember thinking, wow, it's not going to turn off for about three weeks, and that's exactly how long it took. And it was some big seas. It was quite an interesting experience for us since we had never been offshore up until that point. And we did have a crew member along, and so there was 3 of us total. And we watched a lot of movies. We played some video games. Christi was learning French, and we were really excited to see land. And it was a pretty special experience when we made it across, because that was our longest passage on our entire circumnavigation, was the first one.
So one of the reasons we decided we wanted the powerboat was so that we could spend less time at sea and more time on land. For us, this wasn't an endurance trip. It was all about seeing new places and experiencing different cultures. And so we did get to spend 75% of our time on land thanks to being in a powerboat.
One of the most common questions we get is, well, did you have an engine failure? Did something break down? And the answer is no. I mean, we had several things break from wear and tear, but we were never in a position where we were out at sea in distress. The boat performed wonderfully, and we trust the engine, and in a lot of cases, it was just that was the piece of the boat that we know was going to keep working. We took care of our engine very carefully, and overall we had a very comfortable and safe time at sea, and a lot of it is because of the design of the boat.
So we went to 34 countries on our trip, and we got to see a lot of places that most tourists don't ever get to see. In fact, we made a point of seeking out places that were off the beaten path, and we had an amazing adventure and got to meet some just wonderful, wonderful people along the way.
Our first destination was the South Pacific. After we reached the Marquesas, we kept going west, and we went to French Polynesia, which include the Marquesas, that also has Tahiti and Bora Bora. And then we went to the Cook Islands, which has Saguaro. Then we kept going to a little country called Niue, and then to Tonga, Fiji, and then Vanuatu. And each place was very special because there's not a lot of people that live in this part of the world. In fact, about 1/3 of the surface area of the planet is in the South Pacific, but only has about 2% of the population. So we were always treated very nicely when we visited islands, and it was really a great experience.
After we left Vanuatu, we went on to Northern Australia, and we frolicked in the Great Barrier Reef for a couple months before moving on to Indonesia. We loved Indonesia, and we had a wonderful time there. But part of the reason why we had such a great time was because we did have our home and our transportation with us. As we've met other tourists, we found out that sometimes accommodations and travel within Indonesia can be tough. So our experience was definitely all the better because we had our boat. From Indonesia, we moved on to Singapore, Malaysia, Thailand, and then we made a stop in the Andaman Islands. They're small islands in the Indian Ocean. They belong to India, and they're like India tropical. They were really a neat experience, and not many visitors ever go there. Then we went on to the Maldives Islands, and then we finished our Indian Ocean crossing in Oman.
After a great stay in Oman, then we went to Egypt, and of course we bypassed places like Somalia, and we didn't have any problems. We just went right through. After Egypt, we went through the Suez Canal, up to Greece, then back to Turkey, and then we made our way to Italy, and then Malta. Went to Tunisia, which is in North Africa, had a great time there. Then up to Monaco, and then France and Spain, and then we fueled up at Gibraltar, and then we headed down to the Canary Islands in preparation for our Atlantic crossing.
We left the Canary Islands for our 20-day crossing across the Atlantic with one crew member. The Atlantic crossing was much easier than the Pacific crossing was. And we landed on the island of Guadeloupe which is part of France. And from there we went to the islands of Antigua and Barbuda, and then to Dominica, and then to Bonaire. From Bonaire we went to Panama and went through the Panama Canal. The Panama Canal was a fun experience. And then we headed home. We stopped in Costa Rica and Nicaragua, and made several stops in Mexico as we made our way up the west coast of North America back to San Diego.
So we returned to San Diego, and Nordhavn gave us this handy-dandy 30,000 nautical mile pennant, because we just achieved that number of miles. We burned about 12,000 US gallons of diesel, a little over 5,000 hours in the main engine, and in fact there's a whole host of statistics and things on our blog, which Christi worked on almost every day when we were underway.
Our blog has over 700 stories on it, and it had quite a popular following while we were working on it. And since we've come home, we have turned the blog into a book. It's called The Unexpected Circumnavigation. It is a multi-part series, and part 1 is already out. That is San Diego to Australia, and I'm currently working on part 2, which will be Australia to Oman. The book is different from the blog. It has a lot of information that we chose to leave off the blog for various reasons, and it's more personal, and it's a fun read. It's definitely geared to be more of a travel book than a boating book per se, so it's something that boaters and non-boaters alike enjoy. The title of our book is called The Unexpected Circumnavigation, and we named it that because most people expected us to fail for 4 reasons. One, most people don't realize that there are power boats that are capable of crossing oceans. And so when we said we had a power boat, they thought we were insane. Second was that we had almost no boating experience and no blue water experience. In fact, people used to say to us that we were so ignorant about boating that we didn't even know that power boats can't cross an ocean, and that proved we shouldn't be doing this. The third reason was we were the wrong age group. We were at a point in our lives where we were both climbing the career ladder, and the idea of just walking away from our careers was, ridiculous. Nobody could believe that we would do such a thing. We were supposed to buy a house in the suburbs and have kids. Why would we do anything different? And the last reason was that our pace was very aggressive. Most people take 3 to 5 years to do this. Many take more, but you rarely hear of someone doing it in less than 3 years. So to do it in 2 years surprised people. But because we had the Nordhavn, we did it, and we did it enjoyably and in comfort.
One of the reasons we think we were successful on our trip and getting the boat outfitted was because Nordhavn helped us. Jeff Merrill, our salesperson, literally we talked, I think, every week for 2 years as we prepared, and obviously when we got the boat, Jeff was there to help us and gave us plenty of training and transferred a lot of information to us, and he's our friend and he helped us, and we really appreciate that, and it wouldn't have been possible without his help. A lot of people ask us, would we do it again? And the answer is absolutely yes. We still have the boat, we're living aboard, and we had tremendous amounts of fun on our trip. And in fact, the boat is an important piece, but really the lifestyle and visiting all these places is just a very special thing, and we highly recommend it.